Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve. Is the liberal left unraveling? Well, in one state that appears to be precisely the case. We're going to take a look at how an up until now faithful Democrat constituency, the Muslim community, is going to war with the LGBT community and how it spells political disaster for the Democrats. You are not going to want to miss this. Fox News is reporting on a Muslim advocacy group rising up and pushing back against an LGBTQ rights bill in Michigan as an assault on religious freedom. The Council of American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, has launched a petition urging lawmakers to add religious protections to proposed amendments to a Michigan civil rights bill that includes sexual orientation and gender identity among its various civic protections. Michigan, like virtually all states, doesn't allow for discrimination on the basis of religion, race, sex, and the like, but LGBT activists have been pushing to be included in that list of non-discrimination protections for years now, and it looks like that's about to happen. And yet, ironically, the major pushback they're getting for this comes from another Democrat constituency, namely Muslims. Thus far, the vast majority of Muslims in America vote Democratic. The only Muslim representatives in the United States Congress, such as Ilhan Omar, are all from the Democratic Party, and they're not just left, they're far left, they're radical left. And yet, something seems to be happening at the grassroots level in the Muslim community. They're, of course, concerned that expanding these rights for LGBTQ members could entail removing protections for faith-based organizations that affirm the traditionalist vision of marriage as between one man and one woman, and who also, of course, define gender in terms of objective biological differences. And as such, the bill, as proposed, risks violating their religious freedom, which entails the right to define one's worldview in accordance with one's religion and religious ethical prescripts. Now, needless to say, Muslims are not alone here in their opposition to the bill as stated. A number of Protestant and Catholic groups are rising up against it as well. In fact, the conservative coalition that's rising up appears to be very, very diverse and formidable. And this growing political divide between the secular and the religious was, of course, inevitable, given how the two worldviews are radically diverging from one another. As long as the secular civic sphere continued to be influenced by Christian values, as it was for the first half of the 20th century, there was an ethical consistency between public values and private religious sentiments. But as you know, those days are over. Secularism has since gone a radically different direction as a worldview, and the increasing gap between the ethical sentiments of the secular and the religious is contributing to an ever-widening partisan divide. But what makes the particularly Islamic pushback against this bill so interesting is how it indicates precisely this growing partisan divide inside the political left itself. We saw this a few months back in an explosive local school board meeting in the city of Dearborn, also in Michigan. Dearborn happens to be the most densely Muslim populated area in the United States. And this is the scene of what happened when these parents got word of books involving explicit LGBT content being given to their kids. This was the result. Now, keep in mind, this is happening in one of the bluest of blue districts in the nation. Dearborn votes 70% Democrat. And this district that votes 70% Democrat is rising up and pushing back against one of the major constituencies of the Democratic Party, and that, of course, is the LGBT community. So what's going on here? Is this just a incidental dust-up between two otherwise fraternal political allies? Or are we seeing the political left begin to unravel in our nation? Well, the answer is going to blow your mind. But first, gang, let me ask you, how much money do you think you could save in interest payments if you paid off your mortgage in just 5 to 7 years without any change in your current income? Wouldn't that be amazing? Well, gang, amazing is just a click away. You've got to click on the link below and visit Replace Your Mortgage, featuring the one and only Michael Lush. Michael is showing patriots by the thousands how you can build your own personal parallel economy so you're no longer dependent on woke businesses for your financial future. Check him out. Click on that link below. Book a free consultation call with Michael. He's one of us. He's been on the show many times, and he's here to serve you. The key to understanding what's happening in Michigan is understanding the nature of what we commonly refer to as identity politics. And the key to understanding identity politics is how it divides up Western society into two fundamental identities, two fundamental groups of people, a victimizer group and a victim group, an oppressor group and an oppressed group. The oppressor group is assumed to be monolithic. So in our case, the oppressor group is made up of white male Christians. The oppressed group is a coalition of minority identities who together ultimately create a majority of minorities, as it were, whose ultimate goal is to overthrow the majority in terms of who has ultimate political power. And the key here is that what binds these various identities together into a single political coalition is their supposed victimhood. They're all victims of some kind of political and social oppression. So you have this appearance of unity that lasts for a time, but what's the long-term problem with all of this? Well, the problem is that, as it turns out, each of these identities actually have competing political interests. Obviously, the political interests of the LGBT community are going to be very, very, very different than the political interests of Muslim communities. Gang, you don't even have to look, frankly, at competing communities. Individual liberals can end up embodying these conflicting political interests. A couple of weeks back, I did a video on Greta Thunberg, who was in Oslo, Norway, protesting. And of course, if you ask, if I ask you, what do you think she's protesting against? You would have said something akin to, well, she's protesting against what she always protests against, something on the environment and the lack of initiative on implementing green energy. But that's not what she was protesting against in Oslo. If you can believe it, Greta was actually protesting wind farms. She was protesting against the very green energy initiatives she had been advocating just weeks back. But why? Well, within the library of left-wing identity politics, she discovered a competing political interest. She's now an advocate for the Sami people, an indigenous people group in Norway, and Greta and her human rights cohort are protesting the continued operation of wind farms on this indigenous people's land. So as you can see, you don't even have to belong to different groups to have competing political interests. You can embody these partisan contradictions in your own person. Greta, in protesting against wind farms, ended up protesting against the very green energy that she had previously been demanding. She was protesting against what she previously demonstrated for. And this is the inherent contradiction within leftist liberalism. Identity politics inevitably pits competing political interests against each other. And the coalition of the aggrieved inevitably splits apart. That's what I think we're seeing more and more in the state of Michigan, which indicates that the liberal left coalition in our nation as a whole may indeed be unraveling right before our very eyes. As always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You'll definitely want to check out my latest video on Vladimir Zelensky banning Orthodox monks, all as Putin promises to defend Christians. It's absolutely stunning. So you want to make sure you check that out. Click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.